So picture this. The most prolific new artist dropping like authentic street-level Georgian love songs doesn't actually speak a single word of Georgian.
Right.
In fact, their primary collaborator is an alpha-build Linux machine, and their overarching creative ethos is based entirely on the teachings of a Lakota Sioux chief.
I mean, it sounds like a total contradiction.
Yeah.
But it's actually this wild masterclass in how digital tools are just completely dismantling the traditional boundaries of music production and geography, really.
Yeah, and even personal identity.
Exactly. We're looking at a fundamentally new type of creator here.
Welcome to this deep dive. Today, our stack of sources for you comes directly from the website, the album notes, and just the general digital footprint of an artist operating under the name TATANKA. Our mission for you today is to explore this strange new frontier of digital artistry. We're going to look at how this one creator is acting as like an AI director to produce these incredibly ambitious multilingual concept albums.
Which is fascinating on its own.
Right. But more importantly, we really want to look closely at the cracks in that process. What the failures of this technology actually reveal about the limits of algorithms when it comes to, human culture.
And those cracks are crucial. I mean, the artist is remarkably transparent about them, which totally elevates this from just a simple tech demo into a really compelling case study. It's really about human-AI collaboration.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because to maintain that kind of rigid human emotional arc across an entire album, you can't just click generate on a single app.
No, definitely not.
You have to force these emotionless algorithms into a highly controlled assembly line. And to understand how that works, we have to look at the art itself first.
Yeah, let's look at the actual project.
Right, so the project we are focusing on is an album titled Dusk to Dawn, sung entirely in Georgian.
And that is a massive undertaking. We are talking about a 17-track concept album.
17 tracks.
Yeah, with a highly specific runtime of exactly 48 minutes and 13 seconds. It isn't just a loose collection of singles either. It's designed to be experienced as a cohesive sequential whole. The narrative structure maps a literal dusk to dawn timeline that perfectly mirrors the arc of a romantic relationship.
Yeah, if you look at the track list in the sources, you can clearly trace the chapters of this single night. Like it kicks off with track 1, Dusk. It sets this atmospheric scene as the sun goes down over the city of Tbilisi. Then by track 5, we hit Meeting. You can really feel that initial spark.
But like any highly condensed romance, there has to be conflict. So by the time we reach the middle of the album, around track 9, we get a song literally titled Broken Heart.
Ouch. Right in the middle of the night.
Exactly. The relationship fractures right in the dead of night. And then it moves through this whole emotional storm. There are tracks about going quiet, searching through memory, weathering the isolation.
Wow.
And then it finally resolves. Track 16 is Dawn, the turn toward morning, and track 17 is New Day, which provides complete emotional resolution.
But wait, I have to jump in here for a second. Isn't there a risk of pareidolia here? Like seeing faces in the clouds? We are wired for stories, so if someone hands us a random playlist of AI-generated songs and says, hey, this is a love story, we're going to automatically project an emotional arc onto it.
Oh, sure.
Whether the AI intended it or not, right?
That is a very fair point, actually. And it's a super common trap with generative art. But that's exactly why that specific 48-minute, 13-second runtime is so crucial to point out.
How so?
Well, AI models, just by their underlying architecture, do not have object permanence or emotional memory.
Right. They just do what you ask in the moment.
Exactly. If you prompt an AI to generate track 9, Broken Heart, it doesn't inherently feel the sorrow of track 8 or remember the initial joy of track 5. It treats every single prompt in a vacuum.
So it literally has no idea it's writing an album.
None at all. To maintain that emotional through line, the creator has to meticulously engineer the prompts to carry that emotional weight forward.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, you have to explicitly instruct the machine on the musical phrasing, the tempo drops, the specific lyrical callbacks to earlier tracks. That requires a sustained macro-level vision from the human. The AI just simply cannot possess that.
Which means we really need to look at the actual mechanics of this assembly line. Like, how do you build a cohesive 48-minute story using algorithms that keep forgetting what they just did?
Right, it's a huge logistical challenge.
But the sources actually give us the exact tech stack used for this album, and it is fascinating.
It really is this hybrid ecosystem. The production notes list a very specific combination of open source software and AI models. They used Google Flow Music, Claude.ai, ChatGPT and perchance.org.
But before we even dive into those big tech names, my absolute favorite detail in the sources is the very first tool listed in the credits for the AI process.
Oh, I know what you're going to say.
It just says human.
Yes.
Yeah.
And the placement of that word is incredibly telling, isn't it? It completely reasserts the hierarchy.
And just to follow up on that, this wasn't mixed by some magical black box AI that just spat out a finished MP3 with a bow on top.
No, not at all.
The notes specify that the digital audio workstation, the DAW, was Audacity 4. Specifically, an alpha version running on a Linux Ubuntu 26.04 operating system.
And that technical detail tells us so much about the artist's ethos. Like, why run an alpha build of open source software on Linux?
Right. It's not exactly user-friendly.
Exactly. It implies a bleeding-edge, community-driven, almost anti-corporate approach to creation.
Yeah.
This isn't someone using a slick, walled garden Apple product where everything is automated.
Yeah.
It's someone getting their hands dirty in the code. And it hints at a highly modular workflow.
Walk me through that. Like, what does sitting at that Linux machine actually look like for TATANKA?
Well, instead of clicking a single generate song button on a consumer app, TATANKA is utilizing different AI models for their specific strengths. So they're likely using ChatGPT and Claude in tandem.
Yeah.
It's a technique known as model consensus. You basically bounce thematic ideas and lyrics back and forth between the two to get different flavors of text.
Because they have different styles.
Right, because Claude might be a bit more lyrical, while ChatGPT might be better at strict verse-chorus structure.
And perchance.org is in there too, which is just a randomization tool, right?
Right, which you would use to inject controlled chaos. You generate these unexpected prompts to break out of the predictable, homogenized tropes that language models always default to.
Oh, that's smart.
Then, once the human curates the perfect lyrics and sonic descriptions, they feed those into Google Flow Music. But Flow Music doesn't just hand you a finished, polished song. It generates audio stems.
And for anyone listening who isn't an audio engineer, stems are just the isolated tracks, right? Like just the drum beat on one file, just the vocals on another, the bass on a third.
Exactly. So TATANKA is taking dozens, maybe hundreds of these raw audio stems, dragging them into that alpha version of Audacity on their Linux box, and then manually cutting, fading, layering, and stitching them together to hit that exact emotional pacing.
So I have to push back on this director title just a little bit.
Okay, go for it.
Is it really directing, though? Like, if I tell a taxi driver where to go, I'm not driving the car. If the AI is hallucinating the melodies and generating the tone of the singer's voice and coming up with the actual sound waves,
Yeah.
is TATANKA really a composer?
Yeah.
Or just a really good curator of happy accidents?
That is such a great question, and it really forces us to look at the evolution of art itself. Think about a traditional film director.
Okay.
The director doesn't hold the camera, they don't physically build the sets, and they usually aren't acting in the scene.
Right.
But the director decides what goes in the frame and what gets left on the cutting room floor. If an AI generates 100 variations of a vocal stem for Broken Heart, 99 of them might be totally wrong for the narrative. The human is the one who recognizes the single stem that possesses the exact right melancholy to bridge the gap between meeting and dawn.
Oh, I see.
The curation is the composition. The AI has the happy accident, sure, but the human gives it meaning.
Okay, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. The human is the one with the broken heart, so only the human can recognize what a real broken heart sounds like.
Perfectly said.
But, despite this elaborate tech stack, despite bouncing prompts between the absolute best large language models on the market right now, the system completely failed in one specific glaring way.
Yes. And this leads us to perhaps the most revealing part of the entire source document.
Yeah, there's this note from the creator who refers to themselves here as JJ. And JJ writes this incredibly sincere apology to the listener right on the album page.
Very upfront.
They openly apologize in advance for what they call numerous errors in the Georgian text.
We'll understand why that happened. We really have to look at JJ's original artistic intent. The goal wasn't just to write the album in standard textbook Georgian.
Right. They wanted a specific vibe.
Yeah, JJ wanted to write it specifically in the Tbilisi dialect. They were aiming for that local flavor, the street-level authenticity of the capital city.
But JJ admits that the AI tools just completely broke down here. They note that the translation variants either wildly contradicted each other or just completely misrepresented the intended meaning of the lyrics.
Mm-hmm.
Why does a multi-billion-dollar AI suddenly forget how to translate?
This all comes down to the fundamental architecture of how these large language models actually work. They're heavily dependent on something called training data. And in this case, they suffer from token scarcity.
Token scarcity, meaning they just haven't read enough of it.
Exactly. Think of a language model as a highly advanced GPS system. It has perfectly mapped every 6-lane superhighway in the world.
Like English or standard Spanish?
Right. English, standard Spanish, formal Mandarin, because there is an absolute ocean of digital text online to train on. But when you ask that same GPS to navigate a tiny, unpaved dirt road like the localized, constantly evolving street slang of Tbilisi, it panics.
It just doesn't have the map.
There simply isn't enough training data or tokens for the model to establish reliable statistical patterns.
So what does the AI do? Because it can't just say, hey, I don't know, right?
No, it always attempts to guess. A creator might crank up the temperature setting on the model, which forces the AI to be more creative and take riskier guesses to try and find that local slang.
Oh, I see.
But without a foundation of actual data, the AI just hallucinates. It confidently invents a dirt road where one doesn't exist, or it just homogenizes the dialect back into standard, rigid Georgian, completely missing the cultural nuance.
Which really brings us to why JJ's honesty is so striking here. In a landscape where creators constantly try to pass off AI hallucinations as perfect, or just ignore the mistakes, JJ steps out from behind the curtain, stops the show, and says, hey, the machine got this wrong.
It really shows a profound respect for the culture they are trying to depict. JJ cares more about acknowledging linguistic truth and cultural authenticity than, maintaining this illusion of technological perfection.
And if you're listening to this and wondering why an artist is so hyper-concerned with the authenticity of Georgian dialects in the first place, you definitely aren't alone.
Right.
Because when you zoom out and look at TATANKA's overarching identity in our sources, it feels completely contradictory to this.
It is an incredible juxtaposition, truly.
I mean, the name TATANKA is the Lakota word for buffalo. The artist's entire aesthetic is deeply rooted in indigenous American imagery.
Very deeply.
Their website prominently features historical quotes from the famous Lakota Sioux chief, Sitting Bull. They even use a logo designed by Piotr Muduniak. One of the Sitting Bull quotes they feature is, "Let us put our minds together and see what like we can make for our children."
And there's another quote they feature really prominently. "It is through this mysterious power that we too have our being, and we therefore yield to our neighbors, even to our animal neighbors, the same right as ourselves to inhabit this vast land."
So here is the massive tension. Why does an artist anchored in Native American history, utilizing Lakota ethos, choose the Republic of Georgia and the Georgian language to set an intimate twilight to sunrise love story?
It's a great question. But my advice when looking at these sources is that we honestly shouldn't try to neatly resolve this tension.
No,
we shouldn't force it into a neat little box. It is an open, beautiful friction that is really only possible in the modern digital landscape.
It almost suggests that human emotional experiences, like falling in love at dusk or breaking a heart in the middle of the night, are just universal regardless of the specific cultural trappings you wrap them in.
Precisely. It demonstrates how digital tools allow a creator to effortlessly cross global boundaries. You have an artist blending an indigenous American ethos of interconnectedness with the moody, very specific Eastern European setting of Tbilisi.
Right.
And this refusal to stay in one cultural lane isn't an accident. It is baked into the very DNA of this entire project.
Yeah, if we look at the tags on TATANKA's website, this isn't just a music project. The artist operates under a trademarked ethos. Music meets mission. The site is heavily tagged with themes of DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion, indigenous rights, LGBTQ+ advocacy, trans rights, gender equity.
When you view dusk to dawn through that specific lens, you realize that crossing these cultural borders is the mission.
Oh, wow.
In a world that often demands rigid borders and highly localized, siloed identities, the very act of a Native American identified artist embracing the Georgian language.
And publicly apologizing when the tech fails to respect it perfectly.
Exactly. That act itself is a statement of radical global inclusion.
We yield to our neighbors the same right as ourselves to inhabit this vast land. That Sitting Bull quote totally recontextualizes the whole thing. The vast land isn't physical territory anymore. It's the global digital landscape.
That's a great way to look at it.
And TATANKA is definitely inhabiting a lot of that digital landscape because this Georgian album is not a one-off experiment at all.
No, the release schedule documented in our sources is, frankly, staggering. It's almost hard to believe.
Let me just read you this single week in July 2026. I am genuinely overwhelmed by how this is even possible.
Go for it.
Okay, so on July 6th, they release an album called Borderlight, a woman's sonic rebellion from Kaliningrad. Then, 2 days later, July 8th, another release. By July 11th, an album called 𝗧𝗧. And then the next day.
Literally the next day.
Literally 24 hours later, on July 12th, they drop a Bengali language album titled 𝗬𝗕. Then on July 14th, Rat Pack Redux. And then Dusk to Dawn on July 15th. How is that physically possible for one person?
This is exactly where that highly modular AI STEM workflow we discussed earlier really shows its power.
Okay.
When you aren't bound by the physical constraints of booking studio time or setting up microphones or hiring session musicians who speak Bengali or Georgian.
Or physically flying to Kaliningrad.
Right. Your output can literally match the speed of your imagination. TATANKA is operating as a one-person, hyper-prolific global studio.
And despite this massive volume of output, they aren't locking it behind a paywall. The practical details of how they share this art tie right back to that open-source Linux ethos we talked about.
Very much so.
The full 48-minute Georgian album is a 55-megabyte MP3, and it is completely free to download.
Furthermore, they are very intentional about the licensing. The site clearly states that TATANKA's work is licensed under a Creative Commons Attribution No Derivatives 4.0 international license.
Yeah. Okay, for the listener out there who isn't a copyright lawyer, let's define no derivatives clearly. What does that actually mean in practice?
It means you're absolutely free to copy it, distribute it, and share it across the globe. But the no derivatives clause legally prevents you from remixing it, altering it, or building upon it to create a new work without the artist's explicit permission.
That is such a fascinating paradox. They are using AI, which is essentially the ultimate global remix machine trained on the scraped data of millions of other people to build this 48-minute emotional journey.
Right.
But once TATANKA finishes stitching those stems together, they legally assert, stop, this is the final art, don't remix my remix.
It's the ultimate reassertion of human authorship, really. TATANKA is saying, look, the machine gave me the raw materials, but the cohesive artistic vision, the emotional arc from dusk to dawn is mine, and it must remain intact.
So what does this all mean for us? We looked at a 48-minute album charting a single night in Tbilisi. It's created by an artist invoking Lakota heritage, powered by this complex stack of AI language models and audio generators, mixed on an open-source operating system, and released for free amidst just a torrential downpour of multilingual music drops.
Synthesizing everything we've learned today, I think we are witnessing a completely new paradigm for the solo creator. We are seeing artists unbound by geography, traditional musical training, or language barriers, using AI as a utility to execute a deeply held ethos of global inclusion.
It completely reframes what an independent artist can even be. But as we wrap up, I really want to leave you, the listener, with a final thought to chew on.
Let's hear it.
We talked about JJ's honest apology regarding the Tbilisi dialect and how token scarcity causes AI to hallucinate when it lacks data on local culture. But think about the trajectory of this technology for a second. Eventually, those models will have enough data.
Oh, absolutely.
Eventually, the machine will perfectly replicate the street-level heartbeat of a language it has never lived for a culture it doesn't actually belong to.
That is the inevitable horizon of generative tech.
So, if an artist sitting at a Linux machine halfway across the world can perfectly generate an authentic-sounding cultural artifact for a community they have never set foot in, what does the future of cultural appropriation actually look like when the culture is generated by a server?
It's a heavy question.
Does this technology democratize empathy and allow us all to share in a global digital landscape? Or does it just turn local heritage, street slang, and deep cultural nuances into nothing more than a digital costume you can just prompt into existence?
Oh.
It's definitely something to think about the next time you hear a voice that sounds incredibly human, but was actually born in a data center. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. Keep exploring, stay curious, and we will catch you on the next one.